We're both fired up from... I mean, we haven't discussed our feelings on the episode. I think I know you well enough to know how you feel about this week's episode of Challenge War of the Worlds 2.
Interesting.
But before we get into our thoughts and opinions, I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am a very, very tired Sheldon Alexander.
Yes, and this is You Killed It, the Tired podcast about the challenge. We're both burning the candle at both ends, with the Raptors playing in the Pacific time zone and with work stuff. And I mean, I have a very busy day of going to not one but two gala events in the same day. It's
big time.
It's hard out there for a gangster. Yeah,
big time.
In it.
I like
sure.
it. I like it. It's so funny because I know like nobody really cares about us. Like what? Like nobody gives a fuck, right? It's like we just talk about the damn show. But the funniest part was it was about 2:30 in the morning, and I finished editing the post game show. I'm posting it to whatever platforms, all that fun stuff. And at that moment, I have a decision to make, and it's: do I go to bed at that point and then wake up an hour earlier to watch the challenge and then do this pod, or do I watch the show, the challenge, at 2:30 in the morning, pretty much 3, and then take the notes, then just enjoy sleeping until I'd have to just roll over, wake up, and then start recording this podcast. Again, I understand that nobody cares, but at that moment, it's Sheldon. A massive, massive decision to make. And I'll say, luckily, I stayed up and just watched the challenge and took notes because my uploads failed like twice. So luckily, I was up watching the challenge anyway, so I could just like restart it and like troubleshoot it and figure out what was wrong. But I was just like, of course, right? Of course. But here we are.
Of course, it's worth noting that when you tweeted about that, I faved it because I was also awake. So that goes to show. I also have to say, there's just like a slight delay when I just answered your comment because I was yawning. So that's where we're at.
But hey, as we mentioned last week, the best part about the challenge so far in doing this podcast is that the episodes have been so good that despite how tired I am when I go to watch or whenever we, get on the line to do the pod, I'm so excited right away just because it's like, okay, let's get to this because these people are pissing me off.
Oh my God. I will say, they're not all pissing me off. There are definitely people left on the show who I still like.
For sure.
And respect. It's a dwindling number, though. And let's start with Cara Maria's sour, bitter tour continues. So obviously, as they've done every episode this season, we pick up exactly where we left off. Basically, we only missed the bus ride back from the proving grounds.
Yeah.
Tori and Jordan, understandably, still pumped about their engagement, which at this point is like maybe an hour old. Like Tori's still in shock, and everyone is genuinely happy for them and their engagement, except your girl Cara Maria, who gets into like InfoWars level conspiracy theories about how she feels it was a false flag, that it was all staged. She suggested that they're already married. Like, holy shit, Cara. Like, this is such a bad look. I don't know if you saw this.
Okay.
But Cara has lost 17,000 followers on Instagram in the past week.
Is that for real?
People are... Yeah, that is a real number. It might be more. I read that stat last night before this aired. So maybe she's lost another, like, 20,000. Like, so bitter.
It's so funny because I just don't understand it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and especially the way that Paulie's handling it is so contrast to Cara that it makes me wonder, like, at first I would have been like, oh, she's just doing it for the show. She's trying to like build up, you know, some beef between her and Paulie and Jordan and Tori, but that doesn't appear to be what's going on either. Like, not that I was making excuses for her, but I was kind of like holding out, not hope, but maybe she's just not that nice of a person, right? Or maybe there's some other explanation. Like, you can't be that much of a Scrooge that you don't like what's going on. But instead, no, she's that salty and saying that, you know, oh, there's no way that they did that and it wasn't planned and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, he just did an elimination. I don't know how you plan an elimination proposal in terms of like, okay, so I'm going to win. Like, how do you plan that all out? Like, I'm going to go into the elimination and then I'm going to win and then I'm going to propose. And it's like, of course that would take some level of planning because you have to have the ring for sure. But I just don't get her thinking that it's that contrived that, you know, it would play. I don't know. It's just really weird to me. I don't understand it. And even though it's Cara and I don't like Cara, I was still hoping that there's some other explanation and she's just a salty bitch. Pardon my French.
So, that's fine. This is a Canadian podcast. French is allowed half the time.
Oh, yeah. I just realized, like, that's a saying that gets said a lot in, like, for us, but Americans are probably like, wait, what? That doesn't even make any sense. Why did you just say that? Anyways.
Pas de problème. Je suis maudit anglais.
What is happening?
Our 4 French listeners are laughing. I heard a little birdie told me before this season began. It was already public knowledge that Tori and Jordan got engaged in this season, and a little birdie told me that Cara was super, super pissed about it. I didn't know that it was going to like play out like it has. I didn't know that Cara would be so open about her bitterness, but apparently the bitterness stems from the fact that Cara was hoping Paulie would propose on the challenge. And like, now basically, if you think about it, no one can ever get engaged on the challenge again, right? Like, because it's just going to be like, oh, you're just biting why am I blanking on the names? Tori and Jordan. Like, you're just so, biting their style.
Here's the thing, though, right? Like, how many people? Like, I know that, you know, that would be, you know, Cara's ultimate move, but I always felt that it was Paulie that was more focused on, you know, the fake relationship side of it in terms of using Cara to boost his sort of standing within the reality TV world. I always thought that was Paulie's move, and maybe if that's the case, this is the maximum of it or the max of it in terms of Paulie. Like, he's like, well, I'm not going to propose to her. And,
yeah,
you know, if you're Cara, on the flip side, even if you did want Paulie to propose, wouldn't that be kind of worse that you're mad that someone else did it before you on the challenge? Like, that kind of would make, you know, like, you being jealous of that fact and not happy for them. Wouldn't that make your wanting of an engagement more contrived and silly and stupid and phony?
Yeah.
Because you're not worried about, like, you didn't get proposed to. You're worried that you didn't get proposed to on the challenge. That seems stupid to me. But
it is stupid. There's no defending Cara's behavior.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they had an engagement party and she made a point of sitting out, like, that's terrible. It's not just incredibly rude, but it's also, this is such a weird season that I'm in these weird positions where I have to, like, back up Paulie of all people. But it's putting Paulie in a shitty position.
Yeah.
Because he's doing the right thing. And I read an interview of Jordan and Tori where they were asked, like, did anyone's reaction surprise you? And they both obviously cited Cara. And Jordan said, like, man, Paulie had put me into an elimination 90 minutes before I proposed.
Yeah.
And yet he still came over, shook my hand, congratulated me, and was genuinely happy for me.
Yeah.
And he's right. Like, Paulie's conducting himself the proper way. Maybe Paulie's not thrilled about it either, but we can't tell.
Yeah.
Like, Paulie seems genuinely happy. And at the engagement party that they throw for Tori and Jordan, Tori says to Paulie, hey, where's Kara? Because, of course, there's only, like, there's 17 people left in the house. Not even 17. Yeah, 17. There's 17 people left in the house. Of course you're going to notice one of them missing.
Yeah.
And Paulie's in the awkward position of having to say, oh, she's probably still getting ready. Like, I know he was, like, half kidding. But, like, way to throw your partner under the bus.
Yeah.
Like, you might not be happy. Fucking stay for half an hour. You know what I mean? Like, put your own shit aside.
Yeah.
But that speaks to Kara's maturity level.
Totally. And maturity level is probably the right way to phrase it. And I think Nani also sums it up nicely where she says Kara needs to sort out the root of her misery because she's unable to separate the game from reality. And I think that that's such a great point. Like, you're on a reality TV show. I understand that, you know, you're playing a game for a bunch of money. And I understand that there's beefs that go back however many different seasons. Heck, there might even be things that have happened that we don't know about in real life or outside of the game or whatever, right? But to, in that moment, know that that is like a life-altering moment that you guys just witnessed. And to take, I hate that the word petty and the level of petty is like something of like internet speak now and becomes like such a term that gets overused. But the level of petty that Kara shows, it's like such a like crazy level that I just don't get it. Like, how do you not feel like such a chump? Right? Like, they're getting married, everyone else in the house is there. Even if you just went and like sat and had a drink with everyone else or just sat there, like, nobody's saying you have to, like, you know, be their best friends and like give a speech like Zach did, but just show up like a normal human being. Have normal human being emotions that aren't just so completely selfish and so bitchy, to be honest. I don't know. I thought it was just terrible. And I wrote down, like, she's the absolute worst. The absolute worst.
She is. And you know what is even worse is Kara's no longer on Twitter. Okay. But she's had, like, this was filmed, like, 5 months ago, 6 months ago. Like, she has had 6 months to think about this, think about the situation, and she has not issued an apology. And I'm not saying that she needs to apologize to Jordan and Tori, but, like, where's the accountability? Like, surely after 6 months, you could look back, maybe even watching how bad you look on, like, these past 2 episodes, and maybe say on Instagram, you know what? I'm embarrassed. Like, I'm embarrassed with how I behaved.
Yeah.
That was really shitty and petty of me. But she doesn't care. Like, she is totally comfortable. And this is where we flip the script and do our typical, like, real life advice for our young listeners. Sheldon, you and I know each other well. I've led a life.
Okay.
Right? Like, I've had some ups and downs. You're aware of this.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell something to our listeners, and this is very real.
Okay.
Whenever you have a major life event, whether it's good, like getting engaged, or bad, there are going to be people in your life that make it about them. That's just a real life thing. And I'm not saying, like, oh, people are haters.
Yeah.
It's not that they hate you. It's that it's a reflection of their own whatever. It's their own issues.
Yeah.
Right? And that's clearly what's happening with Kara here. And you already alluded to what Nani said. And Nani is very, very, very right.
Yeah.
This is about Kara's own unhappiness, her own bitterness. And Nani's spot on. Because Nani's brought up over the past 2 seasons that Kara has changed and is generally more bitter.
Yeah.
And Nani's right. Like, Kara has to figure out what's going on inside her head. Like, she has to figure out why, like, if you look at Kara's life, she has life by the tail. She has a man who seems to be a really good fit for her, a partner who she talks about how much she loves all the time. She has a dream profession. Like, there's a lot that's going on that's right in her life, so why isn't she happy? Like, Kara has to figure that out. And this is all very real. Like, I think even Kara's reaction is very authentic. Like, it's disgusting, but it's very authentic. Right?
Yeah, and there's no other way to beat around the bush and to say that maybe she's just super jealous, right? And that's just where it comes down to, because she's jealous of the relationship that Tori and Jordan have, because a lot of what happens sometimes on these shows, you have people questioning other people's relationships. And Tori and Jordan's relationship is one thing that, other than Kara, nobody seems to question that. And I guess the only way Kara is questioning it is just saying that, like, oh, she thinks it's contrived, the wedding aspect of it. But we know that that's just being a hater. But I mean, in terms of, do they actually care about each other? Do they actually love each other? What kind of relationship they have? All we've heard from, whether it was Kyle or, I mean, Kyle said, like, he strives to have a relationship like that, right? Josh has echoed the same thing. CT has said watching them get together has been interesting. Zach's speech, which adds so much legitimacy to it, because if there's someone who's on the show who definitely you wouldn't buy into being the phony, mushy, you know, I'm going to play this up for the camera guy, it's Zach, right? And so for Zach to stand up there and give a speech and get emotional about it and discuss the fact that, you know, he remembers when Jordan first met Tori and he told them however long ago it was. I'm pretty sure he said the date and I just don't remember what it was. But it was a long time ago when they first met, and Jordan's like, I'm going to marry this girl. And Zach's telling that speech now, watching them get engaged on the challenge with her mother's ring. Like, that, like,
yeah,
there's so many levels to that, like, how can you hate that? How can you be mad at that? You are just a terrible human being. Right?
I also have to point out, I'm pretty sure that the book Kara was reading was a Dungeons and Dragons manual. I could be wrong, but I looked close.
That is amazing.
I looked closely at a freeze frame, and I'm like 95% sure that it was the Dungeons and Dragons manual. Because if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense to take Dungeons and Dragons to the challenge house, because you just need paper and, like, it's very entertaining to play, and you can have like 6 or 7 people play. Like, it works. Okay. I can see D&D being up Kara's alley. So, like, not that it, like,
I have no idea what you're obviously talking about, by the way. You could have just been speaking a whole other language, and I'd be like, okay, sure.
Whatever, Game of Thrones fan.
Nice comeback, man. Nice comeback.
Thank you. That is a callback, too.
Oh,
in any event, what a pathetic scene for Kara. And
totally.
just the worst. There's so much stupid, like, real life drama happening on this episode, and I loved it. Like, I loved the drama, as stupid as everyone is.
Yeah. No.
Let's talk about Leroy, Nani, and Cam.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about going from a healthy relationship in terms of Tori and Jordan to Leroy and Cam. And, hey, again, we're sitting on our couches watching a television show. I don't know anything about Cam and Leroy's relationship, right? I know what they tell us on the show. I know, you know, what we've seen happen, them breakups to makeups on the show. That's about it. But I just don't like the way that this season has kind of gone down in terms of Cam and Leroy's showmance. And I brought that up a couple weeks ago, that it felt weird to me because I just kind of thought that Cam was using Leroy in terms of he was the vote. She was preying on the fact that he's a super nice guy and a super loyal guy, and the fact that she knew that he still had feelings for her because she probably still has feelings for him on some level. But it just didn't seem genuine, them getting, and I don't even want to say getting back together, but them getting close again. I thought that was super weird. And then you have this whole thing where Leroy is very quick to mention his relationship with Nani and how they're really good friends. And for Cam to turn this into who's Leroy's number one thing is so dumb to me, right? Because it just makes it seem even more phony. Because if you are having, like, if you're the one that is in a relationship with them or wants to be in a relationship with them, why are you even worried about that? Do you know what I mean? Like, why does he have to say anything? Like, you should understand, hey, that's his really good friend. You should understand, okay, well, he's the one in my bed or I'm in his bed, so I don't have anything to worry about. But to keep pushing this narrative over and over again, it just seems weird to me, and I don't have a good feeling about it. I'm going to be honest, I don't. What do you think?
I actually, much like Kara's reaction, I don't like how Cam's going about her business, but I think it's authentic. Like, I do think she has feelings for Leroy, and I think she's threatened by his closeness with Nani. I don't think there's any romantic or sexual tension between Nani and Leroy, but I do think that it happens where sometimes your partner has a close friend of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't want to be heteronormative, but I don't know how else to phrase it. And I think that, I think that Cam and Leroy genuinely have feelings for each other, and I think Cam is still sort of insecure about their relationship because of their history, and she's probably wondering, like, is she getting used a little bit? And so I think she's really overcompensating and, like, acting out and lashing out. And what you get is essentially, and I know you're going to get this reference, and I'm so excited, this is a Money Jane situation. That's what it is.
That is so ridiculous.
Now, most of our listeners don't know what Money Jane is. So I'm going to ask you, dear listener, pause this podcast just for a moment. Go on YouTube. It's not on Spotify. I already checked. Go on YouTube and look up Money Jane by Cardinal Official, Julie Black, which has 2 L's, but spelled like July, and Sean Paul. It's a banger. Go listen to it. It's mid-90s hip-hop.
Yep.
It's by Baby Blue Sound Crew. Then come back. Maybe read the lyrics, and you'll see what I mean. This is a Money Jane situation.
That's incredible. I will add on to that
don't make
song
me read lyrics from it. I will, Sheldon.
No. I will say that song is a banger. I will co-sign that.
Thank you.
Shouts to Baby Blue Sound Crew and Cardi and Julie Black.
Yes.
But I just that's amazing.
Real talk, Cardi is the best rapper Toronto has ever produced. I said it.
That's a debate for a whole other. Wow. That's a can of worms, and I'm not ready to open up, John. I'm not going to lie to you. My brain capacity at this point. But wow is all I'll say. How about that?
I can't wait to see my mentions after that comment. Go ahead, Sheldon.
Yeah, I just find this whole thing super weird because, you know, they even have the conversation, and Cam and Leroy, they've been solid, but, you know, Cam even asked Leroy if he thinks it's dangerous that they're kissing, and Leroy says, yeah, but fuck it. And I'm just like, I mean, this doesn't sound like it's going in a pretty healthy direction. And the Nani side of it, they've shown already that they can go away and come back and have a relationship within the house that doesn't agree with their relationship outside the house, right? Meaning that, you know, they're not in the same alliance, but they're looking out for each other. They've shown they can do that over multiple seasons. It doesn't take that long to go back to last season where Cam was blatantly making out with Theo just to make Leroy jealous, right? Like, that was a thing that happened. Wasn't that last season?
Yep.
So to now be in this position where conveniently Leroy happened to be the swing vote, or at least a swing vote within the U.S. alliance, and then magically, like, it's just too... And maybe it's my cynical single nature. I'll be honest. But it just seems so odd to me. And I definitely fall on the side of what you were explaining in terms of being able to have platonic relationships and have it not be, you know, not be anything to worry about. And I feel like there's a hard line in the sand where some people are able to do it and some people just aren't. And there's no, like, rhyme or reason to it, but that's just the way it is. So if you're Cam and you're thinking, wait a second, I don't trust this, I'm insecure, Nani is a beautiful woman, I know her and Leroy probably had their thing a while ago, and even though I'm being told it's done now, I don't know if I trust it, I'm threatened by this woman. If that's where they're at, I could understand it, but I just think that there's a game aspect to this all that has flipped right before our eyes.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's hard. I do feel like I feel bad for Leroy because I, like, both Cam and Nani are so, like, I see both of their points, but also neither one of them are making any healthy choices to resolve the situation.
Yeah. I love
you know what I mean? Like,
both of them in the sense that they're both so stuck in their ways, right? Like, this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I expect, and I love it. They're both, like, such strong, beautiful, powerful women, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Now let's talk about another disastrous relationship.
So here's the thing. The funny thing about Dee and Rogan, right? As they have this scene where they're talking and, you know, they're doing the whole lovey-dovey thing, I'm not even paying attention to them, right? I'm just like, I even wrote down, why do I care? Do you care? This is ridiculous. Dee says Rogan is her rock. I don't even care. Then all of a sudden it flips and we get a cut to, I mean, I don't even know how to put this back. How to put this, but Rogan's talking about how he thinks Dee is holding him back. And it was funny how, like, the scene just shifted. Like, it was a daytime scene with him and Dee, and then all of a sudden, like, it flipped to nighttime, and now you see Rogan with Joss and Pauly, and it completely flips. And now my guy's talking about how Dee's holding him back, and he asks her to work out, and she doesn't want to do it. And sometimes she does, or she says she's going to, but she's like, oh, tomorrow. And he doesn't want to cost his friend, his best friend Joss, he doesn't want to cost him money. And now, feelings aside, he wants to cut Dee. And that's when my ears perked up, and I was like, wait, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Because if there's one thing that I don't trust these dudes to execute a plan.
Oh my god.
To get
Talk
his
about the gang.
Right, to get his girlfriend out of the game with no blood on his hands. Like, if there's one thing that these dudes cannot execute, it was this elaborate scheme that they're trying to come up with to figure out how they could get rid of his girl on the show.
What? First of all, in this scene where Joss and Pauly and Rogan are having a conversation, and CT is listening into, are Joss and Pauly wearing matching outfits?
It appears so.
And, like, I have all caps, Rogan says he wants Dee to go in? Like, what is he thinking? And, like, he's right. She might just be their weakest player. Mm-hmm. But, buddy, you can't change course on this.
Yeah. like why now all of a sudden? You've gotten rid of Georgia. You've you've tried to throw in Jenny already before this episode. You've done all these things. You've thrown in Theo. And now all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I'm going to get rid of our weakest player who, I mean, you could get rid of Kaylee, who's probably worse than Dee, but instead you're like, nah, I'm going to get rid of my girl. How, like, what sense does that make? I just don't understand.
When Rogan says, I don't want to cost my best friend, like, the chance to win money, if I were Joss, I'd be like, hey, man, don't drag me into this. Like, don't make me your reason to do a shitty thing. Like, and also, there's so much to, like, this whole plan. There's so much to parse out. Like, there's obviously a camera with them in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not small cameras. They're like, we talked about how it's Joss, Rogan, Polly, and CT having this conversation. There's 5 people in that conversation because there's also a camera operator.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Rogan, D is going to see this. Like, even if let's say the plan goes perfectly, and it's just like D does not for a moment suspect Rogan. She will when she watches the show. Like, what is he thinking?
Well, there's so many levels that didn't make sense. Because if you're Rogan and you want her to go in, but now you don't want to do it yourself, so you want to get the other side to do it. But now if you're Polly, why do you want to put in D? You don't want to eliminate D. You want to eliminate a strong person from the other team because that's how you play the game, or that's how you should be playing the game. I just don't understand this logic at all. Like, why would you wait until this point to say this is who you want to lose when clearly you don't know, none of them know, what the structure of the final is going to be. So why have you arbitrarily decided now that you want the strongest team going into the final when for the previous however many weeks you've been doing the opposite of that?
Yeah, if you truly wanted the strongest possible alliance, this is 2 days after they eliminated Olympic caliber athlete Theo.
Yeah. It really makes no sense. It really does.
And, like, if, let's say, for argument's sake, okay, you really have feelings for D, but you actually want to build the strongest possible team, well, then why didn't you just, like, get rid of all the weak players except for D?
Exactly. Like, so...
Like, oh my god, like... The mind, I'm agog. Like, I can't even begin to cope with what they're thinking.
But the decision to keep Kaylee, who's Josh's friend, over your girlfriend, because that's the other thing. It's one thing if in this whole thing Rogan just admits, you know what, I don't even really like her that much, or it's not that serious, or maybe it went a little further than I thought it was going to. Do you know what I mean? Like, if he admitted that he didn't really care about her as much as he's been leading on, then I could understand this. But he doesn't even do that.
Yeah.
It just makes this super confusing. But on top of that, the other dumb part about this plan is to ensure that they can get D into the elimination. The Brits have agreed to throw said challenge so that they could get D into said elimination, right? That's their plan. So next day, challenge day rolls up, and it's called Escape to Freedom.
Yep.
And there's a boat that's towing 120-foot, like, what do you call that? Like a floating device? Let's say floating snake?
Like a dock.
Like a dock, sure. And you have to basically climb across this obstacle course that is on top of said dock. And while it's moving, there is another person, a member of the other team, that is trying to stop you. Basically, there's 2.5 minutes, and as many people as possible that you can get through the obstacle course, you win. And so they've drawn names to see who's going to go in. And I thought that was also really dangerous if you're talking about trying to throw a challenge and the other team is drawing names to see who's going to be participating, because not everybody knows about this plan yet. Oh, man. So Jenny is up first, and she doesn't really know what to do, right? And Killa Cam is the one who has the main job of trying to hold the UK women back. UK women featuring Tori, right? And Killa Cam and Jenny basically go at it. Cam throws Jenny off, but Jenny holds on to Cam, pulls her off as well, which then obviously allows the rest of her team the free pass to get to the end and ring the bell.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you through, because it's not like we got to see this challenge actually operate much more than this, but I'm going to ask you, what do you think of this challenge?
I really liked it because it was a little different from what they normally do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a puzzle. It's not like the classic heights over water. I liked a lot. Like, I liked the visual. It was interesting. You know, employs sort of different strategies. Like, we never really saw how you could potentially get past the defender.
Yeah.
Like, it so benefits the defender that in a lot of ways, what Jenny did was smart. Like, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to take out Cam with me, and then everyone behind me can just score. Kind of ruined because Tori, like, immediately fell off.
Yeah.
She basically bounced off the dock and out.
Yeah.
But what Jenny did was probably the best thing you could do, because I honestly don't see how you could dislodge the defender.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. Like, I would have liked to have seen other people try. I was interested to see what was going to happen with Zach as the defender.
I totally agree with that. And, you know, to see the other team go as well, they basically did the exact same thing in terms of Jenny was a defender. Jenny ends up going off right away. And then the other team was able to race through and get all their points. But then it flips when it's the guy's turn. And Zach becomes the pretender for the guys' team. And CT is up first. And CT runs up and then stops and sits down with his legs crossed. And Zach's like, "What are you doing?" And CT says, "I'm throwing it." And then they start doing rock, paper, scissors. And I didn't understand this play at all. And CT just says he needs to be with the numbers. This is his decision. And you can see the rest of the people who are standing back on dry land are all stunned. Because they're just like, what's going on? They're watching them literally play rock, paper, scissors to kill out the entire time. And Jordan's mad. He's on the boat just like, what? And I love this moment of everyone trying to figure out, wait, what's going on? And then B, who knew? Were you in on this? Were you in on this? Like, that part was super interesting. And Rogan is doing a horrible job of lying, as if he didn't know what was happening. And I love how, you know, you piece little things together. Zach says, "Hey, wait, is Paulie in on this too?" And CT's like, "Yeah." And as all this starts to come out, I'm back pocketing this because I'm just like, how does this make sense as being part of your plan? We've seen people throw challenges before, right? This is a theme that happens throughout the history of the challenge, right? There's a long line of people throwing challenges so they can control who's going into eliminations. We've seen that before. We've seen people blatantly throw challenges to make it obvious they're throwing it, and we've seen people fake as if they're trying and then throw the challenge. There was no faking here. CT just blatantly threw it. What did you think of the strategy of CT's here to just blatantly throw it?
If he had done a subtle job of it, it would have been totally different.
Yeah.
Right? Then I'd be like, okay, I don't know about the wisdom of going to all these lengths just to get rid of D, as you and I just discussed. But the way he was so blatant about it basically doomed their plan from the start. And I don't understand, like, why wouldn't you just, like, go up, stay on your feet while Zach, like, stays low, and then, like, pretend like you slipped on the slippery dock and just go overboard? Right?
Exactly.
Or pretend to wrestle with Zach and just, like, waste, like, 45 seconds. Because they only had 2.5 minutes in total.
Well, the other...
Like, just... I don't know. If he'd done it better or more subtly, I would have understood it.
But the other part is, it's CT going against Zach, yes. But then also on the UK team, it's Joss, Rogan, and Jordan, right? So even if all three of them just pretend to fall off or, you know, try kind of wrestle with Zach, but basically let Zach win the battle, and they just all fall in, at most, they're only going to get 1 point. and they'd probably still end up losing anyways. Or if you just ensure that Jordan's the last person, if you just hold up a fight long enough, all three of them, before caving and just falling in, Jordan might not even get a chance to go across. So I don't get why you would tip your hand that early, that you're throwing the challenge, and blatantly just throw the challenge like that. It just made no sense. Like, that part of the plan didn't make sense. And there's not much of this plan that does, but this part definitely did not make sense.
Also, when the Brits, when it's their turn to defend, have, like, if you guys are trying to throw it, have CT volunteer to be the defender, because he's 275 pounds and no one can move him, and then have him, like, slip off when he's defending so that the Americans can just, like, zip past.
Exactly. Yeah. There is a way to do this that would have been way smoother, that would have made a lot more sense than basically just mocking it, like CT's doing, like, karate poses and stuff, and everyone's just so confused. The UK team is so confused. Even the US team is kind of confused in terms of, wait, what's going on here? Because you got to remember, the other part is, not everyone on the U.S. team is in on this plan. And it's also a female elimination. So there's so many levels to this that makes no sense. Because even if you're on the team with the numbers, and I don't even mean the U.S. team, I just mean Team Paulie and Cara, and you're seeing what's going on, and you're like, wait a second, I didn't know anything about this. Don't you get kind of antsy? It's super odd. So TJ is not happy. Right?
No.
TJ is not happy at all. Josh is not happy. He says CT is disrespecting the integrity of the game. Which I just thought was funny. The girls are all mad at CT. Jordan's arguing with CT. CT tells him, yo, man, just take the L. Which I thought was funny. And I thought that what was going to happen, which is what I would have done if I was Josh and Rogan, is I would have just thrown CT under the bus and blamed him. But clearly they're not, like, I don't know what they're on. So TJ says he's never seen anything like this. I hope you guys know what you're doing, which to me is telling me that TJ obviously knows that, like, you guys are trying to play this game without even knowing the rules. So instead of just playing straight up with your team and trying to win, you guys are trying to play this game about who's going to be in the finals without knowing the rules of the finals or knowing the rules of how you're going to get to the finals. It's so ridiculous to me. So anyways,
I really like that as CT is declaring his set for Cara and Paulie, and throwing this challenge, someone turns to TJ and goes, "What's happening?" And like one of the contestants, one of the players goes to TJ, "What's happening?" And he's like, "The Brits are throwing the competition is what's happening." Like, TJ immediately grasps the situation when the people playing the game don't get it. Like,
because he's seen it all. He's seen it all. Yeah. He knows exactly what's going on. And I thought that was really cool. I agree with you.
So the tribunal was Leroy, Nani, and Cam, which to me just seems like whoever decided this in advance was like, let's make sure Leroy has the worst possible time. But also, how is it that Joss and Rogan have this plan where they're like, okay, we need to get D in, and then they go to Paulie with this plan, and Paulie's like, all right, I got you. We're going to make this happen. And then Paulie doesn't have... I guess he and Cara were in the last tribunal, but how did they not have, like, one of their more surefire people in there? Like, because I guess Ashley was in... Well, I guess Ashley would have been the best choice.
But Ashley wasn't in on the plan either because they didn't want the girls to flip out over the fact that they were going to throw in D. So none of the girls were in on the plan.
Yeah.
It's
this is so badly executed.
Ever. It's terrible. So, and you're right. So now you've agreed to this deal without being able to figure out how you're going to actually execute it, because it's not till way later on where they're like, wait, how are we going to get D in? And Paulie realizes, oh, I guess I got to go talk to Leroy and see if he can make it happen. And it's like, wait, what? Like, it's so stupid. This is like the worst plan ever. But anyways, so you're right about the whole this is a tough spot for Leroy to be in. But also great producing by whoever came up with this, because I'm sure somebody did. But that's going to be the tribunal. And again, I'm pointing back to the fact that I don't like this thing from Cam's side of it, because she says Leroy is going to do whatever I tell him to do. And
yeah,
I
didn't like that energy.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, that tells me everything I need to know right there. Like, I don't like that. Like, why does it have to go down like that? There's no need for it to go down like that. Leroy's already stated that he's with you guys. He's with the numbers. So why do you have to even phrase it that he's going to do whatever you tell him to do? I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So
me neither.
Tori's radar goes off because she's like, I'm going in for sure. And it's been basically a constant stream of her and Jordan going in consistently. And even though she switched teams to the UK team, thinking that maybe that would change her fortunes, she's still thinking, oh no, I'm going in. So then we get the whole sit down,
which lasted 10 seconds.
Yes. This nomination ceremony, CT just says, all right, so I guess we're all voting for Tori. Let's get this over with. Everyone puts up their hand. They're like, all right, that's it. And everyone gets up and leaves.
Yeah.
I mean...
Tori then said, is there a third team anywhere? Can I start a new country? Yes, Tori. Canada will take you.
So, if we played this out, right? And if they just played it straight up, couldn't you make a solid argument that the UK team is stronger than the US team?
Yeah. Well, you and I skipped over this scene, but Josh and Zach earlier in the episode had a conversation where they're saying, like, the Americans have constantly weakened their own team, and now Jordan and Tori have flipped, making the British team stronger.
Yeah.
And Zach's right. Like, Zach says, you know, they're a better team now. And you know what? On paper, he's right.
Yeah, his analogy of the Bulls never traded away MJ, and they've traded away a bunch of MJs. And it's so true. And early on, we talked about how the theme of this podcast we've talked about from the beginning was the U.S. kept making the other team stronger by making their own team weaker. And now they've doubled down on that by not only making their own team weaker, but by now sending their players to the other team. So it's incredible where we're at. But you look at this UK team, and minus Kaylee and even D, because I don't even think D is as terrible as she's being made out to be. But even with those two on that side, the UK team, you're talking CT, Joss, Rogan, Jordan. That's a pretty solid row of dudes there, no? And then Tori, Jenny, and you still got Kaylee and D. That's a pretty solid, you know, like competitive, because say whatever you want, and I have about Kaylee, for the most part, she at least tries, right? Unless it's heights. And D at least goes down fighting, like D tries. And so it's not like you're getting walked all over by Ashley, Cam, Kara, and Ninja, right? Like they're not just like running all over you. So it's such a weird dynamic that if, like, we'll get to this later, but the Tori and Jordan plan, it kind of would have made sense, right? Like Tori, when she goes back and she's crying and she's like, I don't get their strategy, and you know, it makes no sense. And Jordan's trying to like calm her down. It's so odd to me because it really doesn't make sense. If Rogan and Joss were just smart enough to figure out, okay, now's the time when we flip back on Paulie, you could be running the game.
Yeah. Like, but there's no will. And, like, part of the problem with Joss and Rogan's game is that they have been playing scared.
Yeah.
Like, and
but imagine if they just played it straight up right now. The UK wins, and then they're like, we're going to throw in Kara.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? Like, what is it? What is wrong with that? And how does that not flip the game back into your favor? That you guys are now going to be having the stronger team heading into the finals, which should be the point. I don't know. It's weird.
If the Brits had actually tried and let's say won, and they could have won that challenge.
Yeah.
Could have won a lot of challenges. But let's say they'd won that challenge. Then they put in Cara versus whoever, right? Like, the Americans, I guess, the woman that they would nominate would be Nani.
Yeah.
So then you put in Cara versus Nani. Or Cam versus Nani. Either
Cam
way.
versus Cara.
Yeah, either way, the American team is weaker.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see why the Brits can't see this. Like, they've got this weird belief that they can't do it without the help of Polly and Cara. And an important thing happens at the tribunal after Tori's voted in.
Okay.
First of all, Cam really brought this, like, angry energy toward Tori. Like, why did you switch teams? Well, what the fuck should I do? Like, should I keep, like, getting sent in by my own team? Like, Tori is guilty. Tori and Jordan are guilty of giving Joss and Rogan too much credit. But, like, what the fuck? Like, I don't understand why Cam was so, like, standoffish with Tori about it.
Well, that energy continued with Cara and Ashley, right? Because they're just like, great plan, Jordan. Way to go, Jordan. And it's like, no, their plan didn't work because the UK team are idiots.
Yeah. Like, they had to do something. Like, oh, should they have just stayed put and, like, continue to get shit kicked by their teammates? Like, and...
Also, too, what's the saying, John? The definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So they're supposed to keep staying on the U.S. team, hoping that maybe they would figure it out. No, of course not. You try something else.
Yeah. The only way that they'd be able to flip it is if Jordan and Tori stayed on the team and were allowed to form a tribunal with Zach or maybe Josh. Yeah. Like, that's the only way they'd be able to get out, or Nani. It's the only way they'd be able to get out, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, Leroy says to Cam and Nani that they all have to vote the same way. And, like, do they?
Yeah.
and Nani even says, like, no, we don't. Like, listen, you voted your own way. I'm going to vote my own way. You guys have your little game plan worked out. Like, so it goes. I don't understand this insistence on having a unified front. Like, at this point, it is what it is, and I hate that saying, but, like,
I think this is
just
another...
do what you're going to do.
It's another ploy from Cam just to show dominance over Nani. Just to show we're all going to say the same thing, meaning you're going to say what we want you to say, just to show you who's in charge. Because there's really no other purpose in that. Like, you're already getting your own way. Now you want her to further ruin her standing with the few people she has left in the house. Right? Like, that's just a straight bully tactic just cuz. And so I rep Nani for being like, nah. Leroy, I don't even get why he would care about that. Like, that's such a dumb thing to, agree to, but... I mean, that's what they ask, and Nani's like, no, not going to do it. And I like her for that.
And we had this problem last week, too, where they're like, we all have to vote the same way. And Zach's like, no, like, you guys have the votes to do what you want to do. I'm going to vote, like, with, like, what's integrity to my game. Like, why do we have to all vote together?
Yeah.
You guys have the numbers. It's fine. It's fine. We know where we sit in this situation. So we're at that point in the season where the club scenes aren't fun anymore.
They were never fun, by the way, this season.
Yeah, but this happens every season where, like, everyone's sick of each other, like, everyone's coupled off. Every season there's a point where the club scenes aren't fun anymore.
Yeah.
So there's sort of... like, the group of people who I actually, aside from Josh, would like to hang out with. Like, Jordan, Leroy, Nani, Zach, and Josh are all sitting at a table together. And it comes up again where Leroy's like talking about how badly he wants to win. It's not even about the money at this point.
Yeah.
And Jordan and Ani are like, look at this table. This could have been the team. And like literally what changed was that you flipped to Kara and Polly.
Yeah.
And like Leroy totally ignores that point. And Polly overhears the conversation and says, hey Cam, you hear what's going on over there? And Cam immediately goes over there to be like to rain on that parade. And it's like, Leroy, we gotta talk. It's an emergency situation. I really felt like all episode Cam was overstepping her bounds.
Yeah.
I generally like Cam, but there's like, who cares if he's talking about this? He's not going to change his mind. Like, you don't have to like hold his hand through every point of this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the fight returns to the house because Leroy is, I don't want to say confronting Cam, but he's saying to Cam, hey, I'm allowed to talk game with my friends. Mm-hmm. Like, my mind is not changing. They're my friends. I'm allowed to hang out with them. Naturally, conversation's going to switch over to game talk. I'm allowed to talk about it. Like, you shouldn't have inserted yourself.
And also,
Drunk Nani.
Also, too, there's no hiding at this point, right? So, like, Cam turning this into, do you want me to tell her what it's like? I could tell her what it should be like. If you want me to go tell her, I'll go tell her. And Leroy's like, calm down, please. Calm down. Like, he's just having a conversation. And so, yeah, as it spilled back into the room, and then Nani walks in that red dress, first off. Slow clap for that, Nani. Yeah. But
yeah,
then it was like
drunk Nani.
After it was Cam doing too much, Nani was kind of doing too much because she's like, what are you guys talking about? Why can't you guys talk about it when I'm here? What are you guys saying about me? And then it turns into more dumb stuff. And Leroy's just trying to be the peacemaker. He's like, you guys are fighting for no reason. This is so dumb. Like, I care about both of you guys. This has, like, there's no ill will, or there shouldn't be. And this is just dumb. You guys both need to stop right now. And they finally relent. And Leroy ends up going to his own room. Everyone goes off to their own separate ways. And eventually, the part I found weird was CT telling Cam, don't worry, she already won. And Nani is all by herself. She's all alone. Don't even worry about it. And then this solidifies my whole, well, in my mind, as I continue to build the case that Cam is just using Leroy. Cam goes to, like, make it up to Leroy and gives the puppy dog look that, you know, like the 2-year-old gives their parents when they, like, spill something and did something wrong. That's what Cam does to Leroy here. And then says she's sorry, and Leroy's like, that's all I wanted to hear. And then they end up going to sleep or whatever, I don't know. But at this point, I'm just like, okay, this is really, really dumb. And what did you think of that?
Well, I think that what CT was driving at was that Cam doesn't need to compete with Nani. Like, I think CT is more in my camp where he thinks this is Cam's insecurities.
I see what you're saying.
She feels I see what
you're saying. Yeah.
She feels a need to compete with Nani, and CT's saying, you already won. Like, Leroy loves you.
Yeah.
Stop making life hard for him and his friend.
That's fair.
I like you, I didn't love Cam. Well, it's good that Cam apologizes, and like she actually does say I'm sorry. But also, the mature thing to do would be to explore her feelings and then talk it out with Nani. Maybe after the show is done filming, but like figure out why you have like this weird hate on for Nani, who by all accounts is a nice, good person, and like you should be able to take Leroy's word for it also that she's a good person. And, like, talk things over with her. Like, this is one of the frustrating things about watching this show. Being in your mid to late 30s, however you want to characterize our age. Like, so much of the drama would just be resolved by, like, a little therapy and, like, a little conversation without cameras present. And no one ever does it. That's not fair. I think it sometimes happens. But, like...
But, yeah, neither the beef here with Nani and Cam, it's like they could just have a grown-up conversation, because here's the other thing. They're on the same team.
Yeah.
So they could just have and come to some agreement that there's no reason for us to be at ends, because at the end of the day, we are on the same team. Cam, I think, wanted a little more credit for the fact that she put Nani into the tribunal, and I think she didn't get the, oh, thank you, or bowing down response that she probably expected, and I think that's where her beef lies, or some of her beef lies anyways. But then,
you also shouldn't need to expect that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because, like, whatever. Like, what's that really matter? Right? Like, you're not throwing in Nani because Leroy would get too mad at you if you did throw in Nani. So the gesture of putting her in the tribunal doesn't really... Putting her in it when her vote doesn't matter, right, isn't as grand of a gesture as you want it to be. But whatever, let's get to more of the interesting side of this, because now we're trying to figure out the plan of how Paulie is going to get D to go in, and Paulie goes to Leroy, and and Leroy's like, wait, I don't know if I can do this, because on top of it, not only do they want Leroy to put D in, but they want them to blindside D and not tell any of the girls that this is going to happen. And to Leroy's credit, Leroy's like, no, I can't do that. Like, there's no way. He's like, of all people, I've been the one preaching team unity and preaching all this stuff. I'm not going to blindside them. So if this is what we got to do, you guys got to at least tell D ahead of time, because I'm not going to blindside them. And
CT makes the point that it's literally the only thing the British side has asked from the Paulie-Cara alliance. And he's right.
Yep.
Like, that's the only time the British side of their alliance has asked a favor of the American side of the alliance. And Paulie's like, well, we'll see. And CT says in confessional, I'm starting to feel like this alliance is one-sided.
Shit.
No fucking shit. No shit. Oh my god. So then Leroy, this fucking gang that can't shoot straight, tells Cam about the plan to put in D in front of Ninja.
Yeah.
Like, literally the second worst person to announce this plan in front of, the only worst person to say it in front of would be D.
Yeah.
Like, Leroy, what are you doing? And, like, Leroy and Cam, obviously, have lots of one-on-one time together. Just, like, when you're, like, having a little cuddle in bed, be like, hey, by the way, Cam, let me float something past you. Right? Or just pull her aside, as she did at the club. Like, how could you say this in front of Ninja? Like, and Ashley, because Ashley's manipulative. But oh my god!
But also at this point, there was no need for that, because they just agreed that they weren't going to blindside her. So there was no need to even have this discussion to say that this whole thing has even gone on. Like, it served no purpose, right? Other than to let the whole house know. Because if they just went to like, and let's say, there's no need for Leroy to go do this, because all that happened is, it just means other people knew before they knew, like the girls on the team, but then also before D knew, which just makes it worse to begin with. And so the whole purpose of this was to put her in and not get blamed. And now you're getting blamed for putting her in, and you haven't even put her in yet. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But now that's not even going to happen. So
this is
Rogan is now losing his mind, because he's like, oh no, this is terrible. What are we going to do? How are we going to tell her? And CT's like, you know what? I'm going to tell her. And CT just walks over and tells D that, hey, we figured that it's time, we're going to put you in, because we're not sure about the final. And she is hysterical, right? Like, she finds Rogan. She starts yelling at Rogan, whose plan is this? And Rogan just says, yeah, we came up with it. Doesn't matter whose plan it was. And Rogan is just, like, lost. Like, he's not helping his cause at all. And he says it's time to be cutthroat, and it's time to make the final. And none of this makes any sense, right? So she's all going, and she's ugly crying right now. And I know everybody has that ugly cry, but her ugly cry was out.
Yeah.
the thing was, she didn't even have in her mind that she could win the elimination. She was so rattled about everything that was going on. She was just like, oh no, I'm going in, and how could Rogan do this to me? And I'm done with him, and I can't believe I was such an idiot, and I fell for it. And it's going on, and I'm sitting here thinking, but this doesn't even make any sense. Because they just threw in Tori, and so you're going to really throw in D to try to get Tori out? Like, the whole thing just didn't make sense to me at all, right? What did you make of the crying before we get to the actual elimination? Like, is there anything you want to say about the crying and the reveal of Rogan and D's relationship imploding?
I mean, I've only got jokes. For starters, I like that Rogan says in confessional, I think the plan's backfired. Yeah, your terrible fucking plan, it has backfired, Rogan. Because he was talking about it, he's like, you know, the one person I care about in this house, I didn't want to make her cry, and now she's crying. I think that's backfired. Yeah, when her boyfriend, who she fell in love with after 2 days, puts her into elimination. Yeah, and also, I love that CT is such a fucking shooter. Like, I think part of the problem, there's a lot of problems with this plan, but I think part of the problem with the plan is that Joss and Rogan are terrified of ever pulling the trigger on anyone.
Yeah.
CT is not afraid of pulling the trigger on fucking anyone. And, like, you know, the way he threw the challenge was dumb, but CT also can handle the heat. Like, he does not care about people yelling at him. He does not care about making people cry. He does not care about getting into fights. He does not care about, like, his reputation. CT does not give a fuck. He is a shooter. We saw it with throwing the competition, and then when he's like, I'm just going to go tell D. And he's like, hey, D, FYI, we talked about throwing you in. Sorry. Like, I did love that. And I also love that whenever there's, like, all season, whenever there's a heavy conversation, whenever there's a fight, you see CT in the background. Like, as D is going off on Rogan, you see just, like, CT, like, float into the background, be like, oh, yeah, shit's fucked. And then, like, float away. I know it's not a funny situation, but CT's role in this is pretty funny to me.
You know what else is really funny to me? Joss's role, because he doesn't say anything. But he's around. He doesn't say anything, but he's around. And it's just, like, so odd to me. But, again, so their harebrained scheme is falling apart. And then eventually just, there's no real explanation. We basically just get the next scene where, hey, it's time for the elimination, and all of a sudden, Leroy and Cam are voting in Jenny, and you get Rogan saying, yeah, at the end of the day, I just couldn't pull the trigger on it, and I couldn't do it at this time. I'm just like, wait, what?
So
we'll get to this. We'll get to, we can save this for the end. Let's get rid of the elimination, then we'll get to.
Yeah, I do have to say, before the tribunal made their votes official, I wrote in my notes, it would be hilarious if they voted someone else in right now. So Jordan says, TJ asks who's going in from the Brits. Jordan says, we're throwing in my fiance Tori. Cara rolls her eyes and says, oh my god. As if Cara didn't, like, remember last season, or maybe it was 2 seasons ago, when Cara and Paulie went around the house talking about how, like, every surface they were going to have sex on.
Yep.
And, like, loudly had sex to the point that people outside could hear it. Like, fuck off, Cara. Yep. So Nani votes for Kaylee, and I was like, okay, good for Nani, going her own way. Then Cam votes for Jenny, and I'm like, wait, what? And then Leroy votes for Jenny, and I was like, wait, all that drama to not put D in?
So, like, stupid.
Rogan, you have destroyed your relationship. Like, you can't get halfway pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, you had a terrible plan.
I thought you were going to say there ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. That's what I thought you were going to say.
That's a better reference.
Completely different reference, though. We're on
let's
one right
go
now.
back
This is so weird.
and say that I went with the Shook Ones reference. There ain't no things as halfway crooks. Like, in all seriousness, you have gone 95% of the way. You've destroyed your relationship. Like, I don't think Dee is going to welcome him back.
Yeah, I don't even know if she's going to talk to him.
Yeah, see it through. Like, you might as well see it through at this point. Instead of, like, let's not forget, he said all along this was to strengthen his team. So instead they put in Jenny, their other strongest female competitor.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, they are so dumb.
It is
like,
quite stupid.
Incredible.
So,
lost in all this is that it's Hall Brawl,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
TJ's favorite game.
Everyone's favorite game.
Right? Let me ask you, Tori versus Jenny, who did you think was going to win? Because, you know, Jenny obviously has the muscles, she's stronger, and then there's Tori, who we know is scrappy and feisty, and also is strong as well. But Jenny just, like, looks the part. Like, I think Tori even says, all right, I guess I just got to go in and beat Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. I actually thought it was going to be Tori.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I don't know Jenny's athletic background. As, like, good as she is at, like, as fit as she is, as great as her cardio is, if you're not used to contact, you're not ready for contact.
Exactly. And we've seen Tori compete in the challenge enough to know that she at least can, she's not afraid of the contact and at least can, like, handle it. But first off, at least knows to expect it. Because it's one thing to say, like, all right, so I'm going to go tackle this person. But if you've never actually done that, it's not something you just do on the fly. Right?
No.
And so I thought, you know, it was a perfect example of what you just said. The theme we talk about a lot, where it's not about muscles and who's the strongest in this battle, in this game. It's just about, are you afraid of contact? And I don't think Jenny was afraid of the contact. I just don't think that she understood the contact. And so Tori runs over her twice, and it was just, like, it was quick work. But what can't be oversold at all, or undersold, I guess, is Tori just, like, running over her twice. Like, those were two big boy, and I'm saying big boy with air quotes, two big girl hits, for lack of a better term, right? Where it's just like, holy shit, like, she ran her over. Like, I was impressed. Were you not entertained, John?
I was very impressed. I was a little surprised with how one-sided it was, especially the second one.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what a performance by Tori. And I like what CT said. There's a new choo-choo in town, and her name is Tori Train. And CT was just loving it as the king of this shit.
Yeah.
I loved Tori's big reaction afterwards, calling all the women on the American team pussies.
Yep.
I like that she goes over and hugs Jenny, apologizes. Yep. I have to ask you, that was a pretty good debut season for Jenny, right?
I don't know. Was it? Like, she was in, that was what, her second elimination? And the first one
she won the first one.
What was homegirl's name? George's friend? I forget her now, but she was terrible.
Nicole.
And so, yeah, I don't know how good that was. I really don't. But I'll say this, like, I feel like this was a good first season in terms of good lessons.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think it was a good lesson for her in terms of how this game is played and how this game goes down. So I think that part was cool. But I think she can come back. And I like her acknowledgement at the end, though, where she says, you know, she basically says tackling someone is so out of her comfort zone. Like, it's not something that she's done before, right? And having that admission, I think, was real and honest, right?
I mean, in terms of when I say debut season, I don't just mean physically. I think, like, of all the people, I think that in the long, long run, like 5 years from now, when they look back at like how everyone performed, like individually, like when Paulie looks back at the tape, when Zach looks back at the tape, I think Jenny can hold her head high. I think she acted with integrity. I see what
you're saying. Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, she spoke a lot about this in this episode about like performing for her friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
She can go back and talk to her friends and family and say like, and like her friends and family will be like, yeah, like you did well, like you represented yourself well.
Yeah. And
no embarrassing hookups that we saw, no political missteps really. Maybe a little bit naive, but like not.
But she was also just a victim of having a terrible team, right? That like wasn't really focused on winning, and she wasn't the weak link on her team at any point. So no, from that angle, I agree with you. I also found it funny that TJ says, "Well, Brits, you lost another strong player."
Yeah.
Oh man. But
yeah, it was. And, like, I like that Tori went over and, like, apologized and was, like, a gracious winner to her.
Mm-hmm.
Tori clearly has a fan in Jenny who said that Tori is one of the nicest women she's ever met.
Yep.
I have to ask you, what was your line of the episode?
I don't know if I can say that I had a line of the episode. I guess maybe it was something in Zach's speech. And Zach is basically giving a rundown of Jordan and Tori's relationship, and he was mentioning how when Tori and Jordan first met, Jordan was telling him, you know what, I'm gonna marry this girl. And so he's talking about how well they fit together and how Tori is perfect and she's such a nice person and their relationship is perfect because Jordan's a dick. And so Tori balances that out. I thought that was really cool and really honest because it was like an observation I think that we had early on. And so it was funny to hear that confirmation from someone up close and personal, let's say. What about you?
CT had two lines that absolutely killed me. He said after Tori just fucking trucked Jenny, she hit her so hard I shit myself. And then later, when he's sort of like summing up the ramifications of that elimination, he goes, so Tori's back to our team after committing first-degree murder. R.I.P. Jenny. Those both really had me laughing. CT, like, I thought the way he threw that competition was silly and idiotic, but CT had a lot of good moments this episode.
Yeah.
Like, good lines. Like I said, when he said, I mean, it wasn't a good moment, but when he said, you know, I'm starting to think this alliance is one-sided. Like, that really made me laugh. He wasn't going for laughs, but we had a good CT episode. Who was your MVP?
Yeah, to me that's easy. It's Tori. Just when you have a dominating performance like that against a good competitor in Jenny, and I know that, hey, maybe she wasn't ready for the physical challenge, but for that doesn't matter, right? Like, Tori made that physical, and you know, whether Jenny was ready for the physical challenge or not, she got a physical challenge. And I think Tori talking shit after the fact might just mask the whole angle. If you're Cara, if you're Cam, like, you don't want to go in against Tori and something like that after what you just saw. Like, I know Cam's not afraid of it at all, but it's definitely not the person you want to face in that challenge. So I think that statement win by Tori and their engagement party runoff, I guess, I'm going to give the MVP to Tori, and, you know, yeah, that's my answer there.
I think you're totally right. Tori is obviously the MVP. She killed it this week. She said it herself. Like, she had a big win. She got engaged. You know, it's a fucked up game. People are being idiotic, particularly Joss and Rogan. But, like, she's doing what she can. She's trying to make the best of the situation. Like, it's, you know, I get it. I'm with it. But also, it's such a weird, fucked up season because Joss and Rogan, like, I'm really laying the blame at their doorstep. They've really fucked up this game. Other people have made dumb decisions. Like, a part of me feels bad for Jordan and Tori, but this whole situation would have been different if they hadn't flipped out so hard on Wes and thrown him in.
No, I don't even think it's I think even just at this, we can keep going back and say, hey, maybe they shouldn't have thrown in Georgia, right? And that was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
We can say, hey, they shouldn't have thrown in Theo, and that was a huge mistake. But at the end of the day,
club scene, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, at the end of the day, to recap just this episode alone, okay? They threw a challenge so that they could get the other team to put in one of their own girlfriends, okay? Which is a dumb game move and a dumb personal move because Kaylee is still there and you could throw in Kaylee. So, also, by you throwing it, you could elect whoever you wanted to go in anyways. So, by you throwing it, you then could have gotten in D on your own vote, and they don't do that, okay? So then they throw it to try, and then they try to get the other team to do it without telling everyone, and the other team then tells everyone. So now something that you tried to keep secret is now public knowledge, and obviously your girlfriend finds out, she freaks out, and then you change your mind to put in another strong player. So you go from trying to make your team stronger and messing up your relationship to messing up your relationship and making your team weaker. And you did this all by throwing the challenge yourself. That makes no sense. And that is, I feel like I've said this multiple times throughout this season, that is the dumbest gameplay I've ever seen. But here we are again, where I'm saying that might be the dumbest gameplay I've ever seen.
It just gets worse and worse and worse. And I was going to say, like, when Jordan and Nani were criticizing Leroy, what they were talking about was when he backed up Ninja to throw in Jenny instead of Esther.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, it's continued, it's really spiraled out of control. And I have said again, like, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, maybe even at the reunion, I doubt at the reunion, but maybe at some point, a lot of these people are going to look back and be like, oh my God, like, what was I thinking? What was I doing? Like I said, I think Jenny, Jordan, and Tori, Zach, even Josh, who I have been critical of, like, I think they can all look back and be like, yeah, I tried my best.
Yeah.
Like, I did what I could given the situation, but there's like, I don't know how Joss and Rogan, in particular, can, like, hang their hats on how they've, like, played this game this season.
Like, I want to say I hope that for their sake that they win somehow, but I don't even know how that's going to happen. But also, I'm saying that because I don't even know how this season's going to go. And even if you look at the coming up next week, did you see that part? TJ's like, all right, whoever loses this challenge, you're out automatically. And I was like, that's amazing, right? So, I don't know. Like, it's been a fun season because it's been so, like, chaotic every single episode. But, wow, some bonehead gameplay again. But, hey, I am entertained.
Yeah, I'm entertained. It gets me fired up every day. Like we said, it's better than coffee. Where can the good people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander, and huge shouts to the people liking and subscribing to the podcast. Please rate us on iTunes and SoundCloud. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends. The ratings are really key to what we're doing here, and we really appreciate it because it just lets us know that we are striking a chord with people and you guys like it and are enjoying our conversations. And to be really honest, I love the feedback that we get on Twitter, like, because it's funny to me to realize, like, oh, this is when people are listening to us, or like, oh, this is when people are watching the episodes, because everyone, like, it's the age of the PVR, so you know that it's all fully on demand. So when people start flooding us with questions, which happens every single week, I find that so much fun. And I want to give a shout out to Blazer Girl who messaged me heading into last night's basketball game. And the actual handle is at BlazerGirl77. And it's funny because obviously she likes the challenge, right? And like that's how it started following me on Twitter. But obviously with the handle BlazerGirl77, obviously a fan of the Portland Trailblazers as well, which has crossover appeal because, as John mentioned off the top, I do a basketball podcast, and the Raptors played the Blazers last night. And so it was just really funny because I did see the message earlier on in the day that was asking if I was ready for the big matchup tonight, and she wasn't talking about the challenge. Sorry, here It is. Are you ready for the big battle tomorrow night? And no, I'm not talking about the challenge. I'm talking about the Blazers versus the Raps. Rip City versus We the North. And so, yeah, that's just fun. That to me is you know, not why we do it, but it's a rewarding aspect, right? To see that you strike a chord with people and people start jumping on the other projects that we're doing as well. And that's just fun, right? Because we're having a conversation here, but the way that we do it, we extend the conversation. And, you know, Heather, is it, who's always like tweeting at us in a stream every time, like each week as she listens to, like, I enjoy that. It's so funny. Like, I'll be in the middle of work and I'm just seeing this Twitter stream and I'm like laughing out loud to the reactions that people are having. That's fun. So continue that. Really appreciate it. And John, where can people hit you up, man?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. I liked how popular my response to Kara was on our last episode. Yep. People really were amused by how strongly I felt, which in fairness is funny. I'm relatively monotone and in life, like I'm a pretty calm person, but then I got very fired up. It was Sarah, oh god, I'm gonna mispronounce this, Casellas? I feel like I said that right. Sarah Casellas.
With confidence.
Yeah, with big energy, BDE, was saying how much she enjoyed all my emotions, because I am not typically an emotional person. I'm typically very low-key, as are you. We are just very calm, cool, stoic guys.
Yeah, it was well warranted, though, because, screw Kara.
Yeah. I mean, I said fuck Kara, but sure, screw Kara. We can go PG for the last 30 seconds. Until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it. Everybody except Team UK and Kara.